Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to my new video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about Ukraine and why Ukraine is the latest country to be used, abused and spat out following Afghanistan, and now it's Ukraine. My name's AJ, and if you'd like to support the channel, please join my Patreon, or you can buy me a coffee. Either way, like and share, support the channel any way you can. Out the way, let's continue with the show. So I love this picture. I've seen this in a Global Times article, and the title of this article is US Real Strategic Color of Selfishness, Hypocrisy Revealed in Ukraine Crisis. And you can see how this American guy is using a bunch of cards, and he doesn't need the Ukraine card anymore, so he sets it in fire and just throws it away. Pretty much how USA has used Ukraine. Biden not long ago has said, "We stand with the Ukrainian people. We're here to support you. We will support you. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with the Ukrainian people. We will help you fight." And then as soon as this war started with Russia, where the hell are the Americans? Where the hell is Biden? Biden likes to talk a lot of, likes to talk tough, but then on his latest speech he says no American soldiers will be sent to Ukraine, none whatsoever, no lives will be lost, no American lives will be lost. So Ukraine has been sent down a garden path by the looks of it, and it's the latest line of countries that the US has used as a pawn, abused, and just thrown away when it doesn't need them. There is no way Americans would lose one life over Ukraine. Most Americans don't even know where Ukraine is, and they don't really care. They care mostly about their local policy, they care about inflation, they care about interest rates going up in America. They care about cost of living going up in America. They care about a lot of things, but I can guarantee they do not care about Ukrainians. And the fact that America led Ukrainians up the garden path, not only have the Ukrainians been fooled, but it's just a long line of countries that have been backstabbed by the Americans. Afghanistan was backstabbed not long ago, and now they're stealing Afghans' money. They're stealing, 7 billion worth of Afghan money, which could have gone to helping the Afghan people, which could have gone to people that are dying, who don't have food, don't have medical care. Could have gone to all of that, but no, they just said instead, they decided not to give the money, decided to pocket it for themselves, left the Afghans to die, Afghans to starve. They don't really care. 20 years of bombing in Afghanistan, killing millions of people, displacing millions of others, all of these women, all of these children that America has backstabbed, promised them the world, saying they're going to liberate them, they're going to give them freedom. 20 years later, they cut and run. Disappointed. And, it just goes to show America has very much a history of doing this. They've done it in Vietnam as well. They've got a history of doing this. They'll use and abuse countries, and when the time comes, they'll dump them, and they'll, run without even helping them. And a lot of countries don't learn the lessons from this. It's not just America's fault. It's the fault of Ukraine as well. The Ukrainian people who put all of their faith in the American system, American politics. They blindly follow them. I just don't understand why, when America's got a history of backstabbing its allies and backstabbing anyone, America's interests come first. How could you rely on your whole economy, on your people, on an American word? You can't. And the Ukrainian government, Zelensky and the Ukrainian people are to blame as well. They allowed themselves to get into this position. Did you really think that the Americans really care about you and will do anything to help you? The Ukrainians have been used as a pawn. Ukraine had a better economy when he had good relationship with Russia. Ukraine had a really good economy then, because it was linked to Russian economy. Ukraine was doing well, his industry was doing well, and since the government came into power with the color revolution, it was a coup, by the way. It was a coup pushed by the Americans, and they've pretty much destroyed the country. You know, the European trade did not cover the trade that Russia had given Ukraine. The trade between Russia and Ukraine was much higher than what trade Europeans are giving Ukraine. Not only that, Ukrainians have destroyed the relationship with China as well. You know, because the Americans control the Ukrainian government, tell them what to do. You know, the Ukrainian government kicked out, Chinese investments in Motor Sich, and they're yet to pay these investors back, and they're kicking out any Chinese investors because America's told Ukrainians to do so, and because that Chinese investors are not going to invest in Ukraine anymore. You know, it just goes to show it's just a puppet government following American orders. And when the time comes, are the Americans here to protect you in this war? Is there one single American soldier here to help the Ukrainian people? None. It's just all words. It's all words by Biden. It's all words by the papers. It's all words by people. But when the action comes, when it's time for action, they're nowhere to be seen. And I can't believe people are still, have faith in the Americans, have faith in the politicians, and believe everything that the Americans say or do. When they have a track record of lying. They'll use and abusing countries and spitting them out when they don't need them. And I'm also talking a lot about these separatists in Taiwan, because they are next as well. They have put all of their faith into America. They are hoping to be independent from China, which is a huge, huge market for them, and they're destroying their relationship with China just to go with the West, just to go with America. And Taiwan is next, even though Taiwan is not a country, but I'm sure these independent separatists who want Taiwan to be independent will follow America, will listen to America, and whatever America says, they will do. And if America says one day, declare independence, we're with you, we'll fight you along the way, and then Taiwan will declare independence, China will start war with Taiwan to reunify it, and I bet you Americans will not come into the war. I bet you they will not get involved, because by then China will have a very, very powerful army, and there'll be hundreds and thousands of American soldiers lost if America chooses to get involved in the war. Those hypersonic missiles will take down any aircraft carrier that comes near Chinese waters. Hypersonic missiles will start hitting all bases in Japan, in South Korea, in Guam, in Hawaii. You are talking about hundreds and thousands of American lives lost within days. Within days, if a war happens over the Taiwan Strait. Do the American people really want that? Especially during this time when there's huge amounts of economic issues and people are more into poverty rather than going up in the world. More and more people are going down from middle class to poverty in America. Do they really want another war? Especially with a superpower, when they can't even join a fight with Russia. Do you really think they've got a chance with China? China's got even powerful army than Russia. You might not, those of you fanboys who think China doesn't have a huge army, well, you got a big surprise coming your way. China's got a huge army, huge navy, huge air force. If you think it's going to be an easy fight, you got another thing coming. And it's just double standards as well. When I'm just fed up of all of this double standards. I've seen it all before. I've seen it in Iraq. America going into Iraq, invading Afghanistan, killing millions and millions of Muslims, going into Syria. And if America does it, they call it Operation Freedom or Operation Enduring Freedom, and they're going in to liberate the people. But when Russia does it to liberate the Donbass area and the Lugansk areas, they call it an invasion. Can you see the double standards here? Russia is going in there to protect those people. Ukraine has been killing Donetsk separatists and Lugansk separatists for 7-8 years now. About 15,000 of them have been killed, and most of them are Russian speaking people. You know, most of them have Russian passports, Russian citizens. Putin hasn't had enough of it. You know, there was a Minsk agreement agreed about 7-8 years ago, and still to this day Ukraine has not done anything about it. They've been told by the West, oh, just ignore the Minsk agreement, Russia won't do anything, don't worry, we got your back. And Minsk agreement has completely been ignored. And all they had to do, all NATO had to do, all the West had to do, or America had to do, is just promise Russia that NATO will not expand and Ukraine will not be part of NATO. That's all they had to do to avoid this war, but they didn't. You know, I remember the West promised Russia, years ago that NATO would not expand, but they expanded. So Russia has got a security concern. They don't want nuclear weapons on their borders. Imagine nuclear weapons in America's borders. Oh yeah, there was once. Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? So America wants, nuclear weapons on Russian borders, but it doesn't want nuclear weapons on Americans' borders. Can you see the double standards in that? Can you see what happened when Russian nuclear weapons were in Cuba? Nearly started a nuclear war. So why do you think it's any different when Russia doesn't want nuclear weapons on its doorstep? And even though Ukraine has said they're not going to join, even Ukraine has said they will join NATO, but they were not allowed to join NATO. There was a lot of secret stuff going on behind the scenes. There was 2 UK bases being built in Ukraine, 2 naval bases. So they would have housed UK naval vessels and American naval vessels on the coastline of Ukraine. So even though they haven't joined NATO, steps were being taken by the Europeans, by the Americans, to unofficially militarize Ukraine and unofficially make it part of NATO, even though they won't say it. But there were bases being made, or European bases, American bases, UK bases. There's an article here if you don't believe me. Look at this. Ukraine and UK to build warships, establish naval bases together. So can you see why Russia have got an issue with this? Do you see why? They have huge security concerns. They would have had American warships, British warships, European warships right on their doorsteps, right next to Crimea. And if Ukraine had become powerful in the next 10 years with, Europeans, Americans and British giving them weapon after weapon, they might want to take Crimea back. Or, Ukraine might say, okay, we're going to join NATO, and they'll be too powerful to do anything about it. So Russia made a decision now to do something about it while Ukraine is still, not that powerful. All Russia wanted was some reassurance that Ukraine would not join NATO and NATO would not expand. That's all they wanted. They're not asking for much. It's not unreasonable. And they wanted the Minsk agreement to be implemented. So again, that's not asking for much. That Minsk agreement was agreed in the UN back 7-8 years ago, and nothing's been done about it. Instead, the West has been humiliating Russia year after year after year, placing them on sanctions, talking about ridiculous things about Russia getting involved in Trump's election, placing, all of these ridiculous sanctions on Russia year after year, humiliating them. They pushed Russia towards China. China and Russia were not close. They were adversaries at once. But now, America and the West has pretty much pushed them into being best buddies, best friends. Can you see all of the double standards and hypocrisy going on? They say NATO is a defensive organization, but it's not. It's offensive. Do you remember the time in Libya? It bombed Libya to smithereens, killed the leader. The leader who's been the leader of Libya for years. I can't remember his name now, but they killed him. And now look at Libya. It's absolutely destroyed. Libya was a very, very rich country at one point. They had a lot of oil wealth. NATO pretty much bombed the country to smithereens. And they say NATO is a defensive organization. How is that defensive when you go to a Muslim country and bomb it to smithereens? Was Libya threatening Europe? Was Libya threatening any of the NATO countries? No, it wasn't. So NATO is an offensive organization. So Russia had to make a decision there and then. Because one day, if NATO can go after Yugoslavia, they can go after Libya. And now they're threatening China as well. And what's China got to do with NATO? What's China done to NATO? And NATO is now threatening China. So you see, it's not a defensive organization. It's an offensive one. And Russia had to do something about it. And Ukraine has fell for the trap, And talking about Yugoslavia, it's the exact same thing has happened in Yugoslavia. The West pushed for all of these regions like Kosovo and places like that. They backed all of these separatists. They were calling it genocide. And they're throwing around the word genocide like it's candy for kids. The real genocide is what happened in Germany with the Nazis and the Jews. That was real genocides. Now the US is throwing around the word like it's nothing. They're throwing around the word like when it's not really genocide. They're calling what's happening in Xinjiang as genocide when they can't even prove one thing that is genocide about Xinjiang. They're saying 3 million Uyghurs are being held. 3 million Uyghurs, do you know how many people that is? America has got the largest incarceration rate in the world. And that's about 2 million. So imagine all those prisons that America has. Imagine all of the costs to feed them, to house them. So you have 3 million people held in concentration camps. Can you see the hundreds of billions that would cost? Can you see the stupidity of that is? And not even one, you can't even prove it. You can't even prove it. The only thing the West has got to prove it is satellite images. You can show me a satellite image of my next door neighbor and say my next door neighbor is a concentration camp. Am I going to believe it? If I was stupid, yeah, I would believe it. A lot of people are stupid. They see these satellite images and immediately say, oh, it's a concentration camp. China is genociding all of these people inside. Then they throw away genocide word in Yugoslavia, and that was the reason NATO was bombing Yugoslavia and split the country. So how is it different from what Russia's doing? They're protecting their own people in Donbass and Lugansk areas. And they want to be separate from Ukraine. Like Crimea. Crimea voted to be separate from Ukraine. Crimea voted to go back into Russia. Russia did not annex Crimea. Crimean people wanted it. So isn't that democracy? Isn't that what, democracy in the West and Americans have been preaching all around? Saying, if someone wants to be separate from one country, that's a democracy. That's exactly what America's doing with Taiwan. They're pushing these separatists to leave China. When it's your friend, when a country is your friend, you can pretty much do whatever you like. I mean, Ukraine killed 15,000 people in Donetsk and Luhansk. But they can get away with it because they're friends of America. But if another country does it, it's genocide. And that's the excuse they use to go in and have a war. But if Russia does it, if another country does it, they are invading, they're the bad guys. So you see, don't believe what you read in the West. West has got a narrative. The British press, the American press, it's all controlled by the government. Press has got no freedom whatsoever. If a press had freedom and it was allowed to write whatever he wants, it would be, the editor would be in prison, they would be out of business, government would stop funding them, and that's it. So these press are scared of the government. They don't want to go against the government. They don't want to print out the truth. Whatever the government tells them, whatever narrative they are given, that's the narrative they go with. So don't believe what you see in the press. Just think. Just have a think. Just try and understand the history of it. Try and understand Russian point of view. Try and understand Chinese point of view. I'm talking about Xinjiang and other things as well if they come up. And don't believe the Western media, guys. Just, have an open mind and do your own research. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.